Hello everybody, it's Kenneth, and in today's video I wanted to go back to a little bit of SAT practice here. And so today I'm going to be dealing with transitions and then maybe some standard English conventions. So these are going to be advanced questions, which means for the SAT they're typically going to fall under the hard category. So these won't be a majority of questions you see, but they will be important ones. So first we have this question here, and you can see I've already answered it, but in a heated debate in biogeography, the field is divided between dispersalists and vicariances. Blank, there are those who argue that dispersal is the most crucial determining factor in a species distribution, those who argue that vicariance is. So we don't even have to read this last paragraph here. We can see that the first paragraph talks about difference, like debate between two groups, and then this is explaining what the two groups are. So using that, we can try to find one. Furthermore, it doesn't really make sense because you're kind of expanding on the first point. By contrast, it's not contrasting with the first sentence, it's explaining it, right? It's not going against the first sentence, it's explaining it. Similarly, that doesn't really make sense either because it's not saying, like, it's not adding something, right? It's clarifying. As you see, it says it's clarifying. Now, that is, right? You think about it, that is sort of leading for an explanation. So that makes sense, right? Now, tulip mania, the rapid rise and sudden fall of the price of tulip bulbs in the 17th century Amsterdam, is often cited as an example of the perils of rampant market speculation. However, recent research has demonstrated that the episode was neither as frenzied nor as disastrous as has been thought. The popular myth surrounding it, blank, should be regarded with some skepticism. So it's probably like, well, it says that research has shown that the myth is not as true as it has been said to be. So this should be like the popular myth surrounding it then, or should, like, therefore, right? So that's why I think the answer here is going to be therefore, but it could be by contrast as well. And this is really where it gets hard because there's sort of two answers, right? There's for example and nevertheless. You can kind of get those out as like answers that are easily removable, right? And then there's a fake answer. So one of the first two, A or B, is not going to be right. Now, considering that it explained the situation beforehand and why the myth is not as true, right, as people thought, I'm going to go with therefore because it explains it beforehand. So we can see that is correct here, right? And if you really want to read the definition, this sentence is arguing that new evidence contradicting popular beliefs about the event should cast doubt on those beliefs. So yes, therefore is showing cause and effect, right? Well, this is the cause, right? And so then this is the effect. So the research caused people to find out that it's really over exaggerated. So the effect is that it should be regarded with some skepticism. Now, here we have in 1815, while in exile in Jamaica, Venezuela revolutionary Simon Bolivar penned a letter praising England's Republican government and expressing hope that Latin American nations seeking independence from Spain might achieve something similar. The letter was addressed to a local merchant, Henry Colon. Blank, though, Bolivar's goal was to persuade political leaders from England and Europe to support his cause. Well, pretty much. When I look at these word lists, I see that ultimately looks like a good choice here because it shows that he sent it to this one person, but his main goal was broader, right? His main goal wasn't just to have this guy read it, but to have political leaders read it. So his ultimate goal was to persuade political leaders to support his cause. It wasn't an additional goal, it was his main goal. And then accordingly wouldn't make sense because if he was sending it to a local merchant, then how come accordingly it would go to political leaders or persuade them. Consequently doesn't make sense either, because that would sort of kind of be insinuating that the letter being sent to Henry Cullen is therefore implying that it is going to go to the political leaders, which doesn't really make sense there either. So we can see that this is the best choice, right? It means in the long run, and in the long run, his main goal was to persuade the political leaders. So the final question we have here is an economic question. It seems like in recent years, some economists have argued that GDP is an inadequate measure of a nation's well-being, as it fails to account for factors such as income inequality and environmental degradation. Blank, they have advocated the use of alternative metrics like the Genuine Progress Indicator, which adjusts GDP by factoring in the cost of crime, pollution, blah, 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 other stuff, right? So what they're saying is that GDP is inadequate, and so therefore, or so they are advocating a use of another thing. Now, immediately what I'm looking at is the answer choice here, obviously, right? But I see to that end, and it kind of makes sense to me. Why does it make sense to me? Well, it indicates that the arguments about the inadequacy of GDP therefore leads to the advocacy for these next ones, right? So it basically is combining or showing that the inadequacy or bad use of this proves or perpetuates that these ones should then be used. And it also shows that the proposed solutions from the experts are a direct response to the issues proposed in the first sentence here. So it's a direct response, right? Because GDP is bad, therefore you should use these other ones, and that makes sense, right? Now, as you can see here, none of these were good, right? Because nonetheless introduces an opposing idea, which is sort of what they're doing here. But the second sentence doesn't contradict the first. It just provides a solution. And then in short, right, that's a summary. That would be a summary of the first sentence. And that one's not even really a distractor, right? You look at that, you can kind of throw that out immediately because it's not summarizing the first sentence. And then likewise, well, you're not comparing the things, right? Because if you're saying this is bad, to say likewise, then these would also have to be bad things, but they're not. They're advocating for them. So that's all I have for this video. Thank you guys for watching, and if you have any questions or any other stuff that you want shared, please let me know. Thank you.